Hello, if anybody's joined, this is the Society of Cost Engineers sponsor series with our guest today, FACTON. We'll be starting shortly. We are having more and more people join. We have a relatively large registration today, so let's give everybody a few minutes to join. Gary, in a couple minutes, feel free to kick it off. Give us a minute or two to let everybody join.
Okay, Jerry, I'll wait a couple minutes. People who just logged in will start in about 1 minute with the Society of Cost Engineer webinar. Okay, let's get going. My name is Gary Kokens. I'll be the moderator for this presentation by the FACTON team. This is from the Society of Cost Engineers. I normally have Jerry Collins, who is the founder of the Society of Cost Engineers, do a brief introduction, but I'll just be real quick. It's a wonderful organization for those interested in cost estimating, budgeting, planning, profitability reporting, anything in the management, accounting, and cost management area. If you're not a member, just basically log into the website and you can join. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Michael Betts and Jacques DeCary. I think Jacques going to start, and the title of their presentation is Mastering Cost Estimation in Product Development, 4 Steps to Unlock Its Full Potential. There should be time later on for Q&A. If not, I hope that Jacques and Michael will have their email address somewhere in there, or at least you guys can just basically do it verbally, and then people can directly communicate with you. So without any further delay, Jacques, you and Michael, introduce yourselves and fire away.
All right. Thank you, Gary. So that's actually a very good segue for the first slide that I wanted to present, but just a quick word about myself. My name is Jacques DeCary. I'm the account director for FACTON in the Americas, and so my colleague Michael Betts and I are going to be tag teaming here throughout this presentation. So I'm going to kick things off, and Michael will introduce himself when we get to the software demo stage. And so, again, as I said, this is a good segue. Tabling the following agenda today. So the intent is to spend a few minutes introducing all of you to FACTON and Constellation Software. Then we'll kick off discussions about costing related challenges in product design. We're going to propose 4 steps to success, then get into a software demo, reach a conclusion. Time permitting, we get to a Q&A. There's a lot of material to cover. If we don't have time for Q&A, then if you use the chat box or facility to log your questions, we'll be happy to respond afterwards. One way or the other, we'll have this wrapped up by 1 p.m. Eastern. So that's the game plan. A few words about FACTON. FACTON is considered a leader in enterprise product costing. We were founded in 1998, headquarters in Potsdam, Germany, another office in Dresden, Germany, as well as an office in Troy, Michigan. Our parent company is a company called Constellation Software. A few words about them in a minute. And just want to mention our key executives, Alex Swoboda, our CEO, and Ralph Altpitter, our general manager. As you would expect from a company headquartered in Germany, the majority of our customers are located in Europe, with a growing contingent of customers across the Americas, as well as Asia Pacific. Our focus industries include automotive, electronics, mechanical engineering, aerospace, and medical technologies. Constellation Software is our parent company. Constellation is Canada's largest software company that now consists of over 1,000 business units that are all B2B software. All of these were companies that were acquired, and you can, essentially read the rest of the numbers with respect to the number of offices globally. Our revenues are now $7 billion in US dollars. The market capitalization, $40 billion. We have over 200,000 customers in over 100 countries. Did I say 200? Yes, I did. All right. Couple of notes about Constellation Software. First of all, there was a study published in 2022 that ranked Constellation Software as the 8th most valuable software brand in the world. And of course, if you use the updated numbers of 7 billion, we might be, everything else having remained the same, we might be 6 or 7. Now, so Constellation Software, from an investor standpoint, does not fly under the radar. However, from an operational standpoint, it might, because Constellation has its business units operate under their own brands, much like FACTON does. Another important fact about Constellation Software is that it's much different from a lot of private equity firms that would invest in technology companies to subsequently skim and spin those companies. Constellation doesn't do that. The mode of operations at CSI is to hold for life, and the plan is to acquire, strengthen, and grow the companies by sharing capital, best practices, and fostering a sense of community. Okay, so that concludes the portion about Constellation and FACTON. Let's look at the realities of cost estimating when it comes to the development or product development process. And to kick things off here, I'm proposing an illustration. It's not a new illustration by any stretch of the imagination. Many of you might have seen this in the past. The good news is this illustration has endured the test of time. And if I can just kind of, in a few words, describe the main message here, essentially what this illustrates is that the possibility to influence costs drastically decreases as a program or product goes through its development process. Conversely, the change-related costs will increase as a product or program goes through its development process. Expressed differently, the greatest opportunity to influence costs at the lowest possible cost for an organization exists in the design stages. So it stands to reason that if you're going to make decisions very early on in the design process, that you would want to have visibility into the projected costs of your designs. One of the issues with this, of course, is that product cost estimates are often incomplete due to limited availability of data. And that's essentially, there's three main drivers to this incompleteness, if you will. First of all, developers are not cost accountants. And as we'll see when we go through the discussion here, there are a lot of topics that are probably best left to costing experts. The other aspect of the incompleteness of data is that gathering data for design costing is complex. So if you just picture the beginning of the design process where there's a start of a design that already starts determining manufacturing technologies that are going to be involved, and that starts to narrow down the number of locations inside your global organization that might be able to carry through with this process. And if you're lucky, it narrows it down to one or two. In many cases, it could be 3, half a dozen, or even more locations that would be suitable candidates to apply for, or suitable candidates to be part of the development process and the production process. And as you can imagine, if you've got multiple locations, then all of a sudden you're also there's a lot of cost drivers that are starting to get determined. So obviously wages, currency, interest rates, energy costs, the list goes on. That's a lot of information to leave to your engineers to try and gather. And as I said, it's a complex process. Even if your engineers were to get through that gargantuan exercise, they would still be left with the task of consolidating all this data to be able to compare it and make early decisions with respect to which iterations or versions of a design that they would want to put forward. You compound all of this with the fact that if a company or your organization is not using a centralized global tool, then the tools used to estimate costs are inadequate. Not the least of which is the fact that, in a lot of cases, spreadsheets are being used. And one of the challenges with spreadsheets, of course, you might have across different locations, across different countries, different formats in your spreadsheets. you might have different levels of freshness in the updating of the data in the spreadsheets. And of course, spreadsheets are error prone. So recent studies that I came across actually identified that 100% of large spreadsheets in large organizations contain errors. And some of these are critical. So hurdle number one. Hurdle number two, even if you were to overcome this, you'd still end up with an unconsolidated view of the cost associated with the different designs across different locations. And of course, you could try to overcome this with data manipulation, which again, of course, is error prone. And another element not to be understated is the fact that your different locations might be using different methods. So just to illustrate, you might have a particular location where depreciation is its own cost category, and you're trying to compare this with another plant where depreciation is part of manufacturing overhead. So you can see right away that costing expertise is likely required to be able to offer comparable results across different locations. This is compounded by the fact that many different locations might be using different cost management strategies. And I'm only listing 6 here. When I used ChatGPT to list cost management strategies, I had to stop it at over 20. I listed 6 over here, but again, to illustrate how this might impact the interpretation of the data, let's say you're comparing a plant that's using batch size optimization. That particular plant might have or would have a lower, everything else remaining the same, would have a lower cost per part than a plant that's not using batch size optimization. But at the same time, that plant would have higher warehousing costs to accommodate the fact that they produced larger batches. So again, this is just an illustration, but it does have to be kept into consideration and probably best left to costing experts. Predicting material costs is also a challenge. Material costs change on a daily basis. Demand goes up and down, currency and exchange rates go up and down, transportation costs are variable. And so, of course, landed material costs are a huge, it's a huge task to just try to update all of this data and leaving all of this to the people that are responsible for your design and development process. And of course, if they do get through all of this, you're looking at redundancies, because chances are that somebody else in your organization, namely your procurement department, is probably doing all of this already in the ERP system for many of the materials that are involved in, if not all the materials that are involved in a new design. So unpredictability of material costs is an element that complicates matters. And finally, you've got the issue that, again, across your different locations, across different countries and business units, you might have inconsistent cost models. And again, I'm presenting here 4 of the features. I could have listed 20 of these. But again, to illustrate, let's say your program is to be a 3, 5, or 7-year program. Just a snapshot of costs at a point in time is not sufficient to make an informed decision about the total cost of the program. So you'd want to have your cost models at, representing a medium-term 3, 5, or 7-year view into the estimates of the cost of a program. And the other one I want to illustrate, because it's it's close to me because it's something I came across in the last, let's call it the last year, where we were in touch with an organization that produced products and shipped these products to Europe. And these products became subject to fines and fees that were related to environmental regulations in Europe. And of course, in this particular instance, the design team had no knowledge of these fines. And of course, again, this is a very fast-moving world. And so keeping track of all of this and leaving it to your development team is probably unfair to them, and likely requires expertise from a sustainability standpoint. Just one last note on this: the fees and fines from Europe that they were subject to, in some cases, were measured with 7 digits. So very, very significant indeed. And so what you end up with is all these challenges and inadequate tools lead to lack of visibility into product costs, present or future, and it prevents your organization from deploying a design to cost and design to sustainability strategy. We propose 4 steps to overcome these challenges. Number 1, you should have a global centralized system that fosters the standardization of data. And you should also create interfaces with that global system with the tools where data already resides. So there's a lot of data from a costing standpoint that could come from your ERP system. Data could come from your PLM system, thereby enabling your engineers in the development area to focus on the technical data and just focusing on this technical data in the PLM system with the interface delivers available data to your reporting systems that can produce reports that allow you to quickly compare different iterations of designs or different versions of your designs across multiple locations inside your organization. And that in turn enables you to deploy design to cost and design to sustainability. If only there was a tool in the marketplace that could address all these challenges. Well, today's webinar is part of the sponsor series of webinars hosted by the Society of Cost Engineers. So it's our opportunity at FACTON to exercise a little bit of shameless self-promotion here. So FACTON is such a tool. FACTON is a global central repository for costs and technical data that allow you to promote uniform standards for all calculation processes, methods, and data content across the entire product lifecycle. And of course, these tools can be deployed across your entire organization. So and I'll come back to the previous slide in a second, but just want to illustrate that FACTON Enterprise Product Costing can be looked at as a bridge between your PLM system, which would provide engineering BOM information, parts, assemblies, structures, dimensions, specs, with an integration, bring that in and match it up with information coming from your ERP systems, like routings, versions, consumables, labor, overhead costs, machine rates, exchange rates, purchase parts, prices, etc. So in essence, what this allows your organization to do is, for your manufactured products, practice target-oriented design and apply manufacturing concepts that result in optimized costing. And I'm going to add to this picture here not just dollar cost, but also product carbon footprint. Your purchasing team can use the same tool when it comes to purchased components and graduate from a mode of what some people call horse trading style negotiation to one that is more fact-based. Finally, your sales department can rely on the same tool and the data produced by the first two areas to produce and develop profitable programs, as well as quotations for their customers where that's relevant. Controllership also plays a part. Once a program gets into development, your ERP system will start accumulating actuals that can be compared with the estimates so as to refine the estimation process as you go along. And finally, the finance department can inform top management when they're faced with decisions as to where to make and whether to make or buy in some instances. This takes us to the software demo part of the presentation. I think we're right on time, and I'm going to turn this over to you, Michael, to take it from here.
Hi, this is Jerry Collins. Just real quick, Jackson, Michael, first, thanks for being here. Would either of you want to take a few seconds to explain the difference between, or maybe there is no difference between, say, your internal costing software, your product cost management software versus your should costing software?
We're probably, if you don't mind, we'll leave that for the end, because I want to make sure that Michael has a chance to describe the tool, and this will probably make more sense at the end of the presentation, Jerry, once we've had a chance to look at the demo, if that's okay.
That's fantastic.
Okay, perfect. Can you see my screen? Everything shared?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So yeah, thank you, Jacques, for that. So yeah, as he said, my name is Michael Betts. I'm a pre-sales consultant here at FACTON, based out of the Detroit, Michigan area. So as Jacques stated before, we'll be going over the 4 steps to overcome the main challenges in design costing. And now we'll be looking at how FACTON's cost management tool has this ability to overcome these main challenges. So with this, we'll be going step by step, just demonstrating the possibilities within this tool. Starting obviously with the first step, which was having a centralized database where everything is aggregated into one space. So as Jacques stated before, it's a very big issue when you have spreadsheets all over the company. Okay, they could be error prone. You might have limited collaboration. Also, there could be a lack of centralization. Now, before we start showing this amazing FACTON cost management tool, and the features within it, I thought it'd just be a great idea just to first show you around the software for those who may not be as familiar to it as we are, just so you're not getting lost right away. So I've logged into FACTON. As you can see, you'll be greeted by the FACTON dashboard, your central hub for cost management. Now, within FACTON, we have the ability to obviously import your bill of materials from any source. Not only can FACTON import spreadsheets from, say, an Excel spreadsheet, we have the ability to work with your PLM or ERP system as well. So, and once I open up a project, we can see how the bill of material structure will look like in the main screen of FACTON. So on the left-hand side here is our Workspace Explorer, where we're able to have the folders with our projects into them. Obviously, FACTON has a very, very powerful search functionality. So say if you have hundreds of projects in here, you have the ability to search by name, number, offer, type, currency, and so on. However, I'm going to open up the servo motor project, and a project that we call in FACTON is any part that you're making. So for here, obviously, we'll be making a servo motor. And once I've loaded this, you can see that we have 3 main sections of the screen. So if I open this for you, on the left-hand side here is what we like to call the project structure tree, otherwise known as, your bill of material structure, where you're able to add elements, calculate elements, or even delete elements as well. With this, we'll just jump right into the bill of material structure. Obviously, you can see here that we have assemblies as well as purchase parts. Let's just jump into one assembly example. This assembly has routings as well as other assemblies in this assembly with more routings and purchase parts and so on. So obviously, when you look at an Excel spreadsheet, you might have hundreds of lines just saying things. And obviously here we give the availability to condense this as well. Now, the second part where my mouse is highlighting on the upper right-hand side is what we like to call the list styles. Now, when you think of a list style, we think of it more like a view that's going to be displaying any of your relevant information per calculation element. So obviously you can see here we have a bill of material structure on the vertical axis and the list styles here on the horizontal axis. Makes it very easy to read. Going into the list style, not only do we have the ability to change the list style, say if we want to view production in detail or, production just by itself. We also have the ability to work with the availability to see which columns we would want to see. So for example, if you only want to see the CO2 equivalent data, you have the ability just to obviously click on that as well. Now, the third window where my mouse is highlighting right there is what we like to call the project cockpit. And the project cockpit, here's where you're going to have access to all your project-related categories. Okay, your production planning, your sales price, your investments, and so on. I mean, without even clicking into the project cockpit, you get a good view of the life cycle from 2023 to 2028 of this project. Currently calculating in the year 2023, you get a total quantity. Obviously, you can see here 2.15 million, as well as an annual quantity. And obviously, the location right now is based out of Washington, D.C. So obviously you can see this is a very user-friendly dashboard. It's going to be providing access to all your costing assumptions in one place. You can easily manage, update, or even review them as needed. You can do this always while working simultaneously with others as well. So in FACTON, everything will always be available for you. So you're not jumping spreadsheet to spreadsheet. So just show you what the back end looks like a little bit real quick. If I jump into our data administration. So in our data administration, obviously you'll be able to see that this place allows you to manage all operational master data just required for working in all your projects. So for example, if you want to take a look at, let's say, the parts for this servo motor project, all I'd have to do is open up the servo motor folder, click on special, and you can see that the parts that are included in the servo motor are loaded here as well. So say, for example, we look at the bushing, you can see that it's a purchase part. And then obviously in the bottom, it gives you all the information regarding this, the price, currency. Obviously, you have the ability to switch between euros or US dollars or whatever you'd like to use. Scrolling down, it gives you the quantity, the location it's based off of. We'll be coming back to that in a little bit. And, obviously, when it's valid from, valid to, who created it, date created on, and so on. I mean, this is just a little bit of the back end for some of our purchase parts for this project specifically. However, obviously you can see that we have the ability to look into materials, for example. So say, let's look into some materials that we have for this project. Obviously copper, aluminum, lithium, gold, silver. Obviously in the below, it gives you the option to look at the price for this, your origin type, the location as well. Not only do we have to look for this materials, just want to go through a little bit some of these just so everybody gets a better understanding. We could take a look at machines, for example. We take a look at servo motor machines. We switch to special for this. Obviously, gives you the option for the machines that we have used for this as well. Not only we're working with machines, obviously, if you want to see the cost centers that we've worked with this specifically, of the availability to look with that as well. Obviously, you can look at stampings, millings, moldings, and so on. So this is just a little bit in the back end. Again, some of your master data that you'll have. Obviously, none of this will be visible in our project that we're working with. Again, just in the back end of the data administration. Let me close out of this real quick. So again, everything's in one place. It will always be saved, so you can go back and find the specifics that you'd like to see. Now, it's time to jump into some of the amazing features with this tool that can assist you with overcoming the challenges in design costing. So within the cost management system, there are multiple calculation tools to help minimize the effort for engineers. Obviously so much so that we probably would not have time to finish this webinar if I were to name all of them. So I've just chosen to stick with some of our customer favorites, and I'll just be displaying some of those. Now, the first feature that I want to show you is a feature we like to call versioning. I won't go too in depth because I'm pretty sure everybody knows what the feature versioning means. However, in order to identify changes and discrepancies in a calculation, you're able to save FACTON projects in different versions as well. Obviously, this is very powerful for most of our customers because, they might get 25 iterations of something and they might come back to say, look, I want to look at iteration 14 or version 14 or whatever it is. And obviously you have the availability to come back and do that. So with this, just a couple clicks of a button, I'm going to calculate the project versions. So say, for example, obviously we have 3 versions right here. I want to look at this version compared to this demo version that I've previously saved before. With this, I have the availability to compare these versions that I've made, and it'll take a second to compare these. Obviously, both these names are Servo Motor North America that I've labeled previously for the versions. So just to tell the difference, we can go from version 1 and version 2. Now, once we've clicked on that, we have the availability to look at the list styles that we'd want to see. Say if we want to look at sales, target costing, production in detail, or whatever you'd like to see as well. Obviously, with currencies, we can do that as well. Now, once we hit compare, you will see that everything from the bill of material structure will be loaded in this screen. So obviously, you can see on the left-hand side, this is the project structure. However, you might scroll down, you have hundreds and hundreds of lines of this bill of material structure. A very cool feature with FACTON is we have the availability to filter the equal components and take a look at the only things that have changed within this project. So obviously you can see here, the materials have changed, the machines have changed, the production cost has changed as well. Now, not only do we have this availability for the whole project structure, we have the availability to filter materials, for example, or if we want to look at just additional costs, we have the ability to look at that. We have the availability to look at the manufacturing processes, anything of this sort for the bill of material structure. Not only can we work with this for the project structure, we have the can look at, say, the production planning when we're looking at different versions. So say, for example, the production planning for 2022 is different than, or 2023 is different than 2023. And there you have the ability to look at that. Not only can we look at that, we can look at the quantity distribution as well. So if we just scroll over, you can see the quantity per month. If we take a look at both of them, obviously you can see the quantity per month as well. Obviously nothing has changed from there because I have not changed that within the versions. Now, not only can we do production planning, we have the availability to look at the sales price per year, the exchange rates used in both projects, the locations that we have used in both projects, just scrolling down, shift models, investments for the both projects, and so on. Now, I will be coming a little bit more in depth into this later in the demonstration. This is kind of like our project cockpit, but this just wanted to show you how we're able to create versions and look at different comparisons for this project as well. Now, the next feature I want to show you is what we like to call target costing. Now, again, I won't go into too depth of a definition because I'm sure everybody here realizes how target costing, you get supplier gives you a certain target that you must hit, or you have a certain target that you must hit. Within FACTON, actually, in our list styles, if I jump to target costing, we always give you visibility to the status of this target cost. So obviously you can see here, for example, the actual of this servo motor is 31.64 euros per piece. and it gives you a target of 26.58. So for example, if we want to change, obviously you can see the red. If we want to change this to, say, what was it, 31.64, we can see how that changes as well. So obviously you can see here the status has immediately changed from red to green. So basically just gives you all time in real time, just a status of the target cost as well. Now, not only can we do with define, if we take a look at this, we obviously have the availability to look at the target cost as well as target delta. We can set the targets per year. If I click on that, obviously you can mess with that as is. But just for this demo purpose, we will move on with the time crunch as well. So that was a little bit for our target costs. I will jump back into the sales list style. Now, the next feature I want to show you when we jump back into our project cockpit, and we'll take a look at this immediately. When I jump into the project cockpit, you're able to see 3 sections of the production planning screen. Obviously, the production period, we're able to look at start of production, end of production. We can look at per year, as well as the surcharges attached to the location at the bottom. Now, with this in the fiscal years, obviously you can see it goes from 2023 to 2028. You get the gross quantity per year. We're able to look at deduction percentage if you are interested in that, as well as the quantity and total quantity. Now, an interesting thing with FACTON is people deciding where to supply the products from. So obviously right now we have the location attached at Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C. is attached with these certain surcharges that you might have. If we take a look at this and we switch from Washington, D.C. to Berlin, for example, you can tell that some of the surcharges have changed. So, for example, if you take a look at Cape Town, the surcharges have changed with it. Right now, obviously, we'll stick with Washington, D.C. This is very powerful because it gives you a real-time calculation of, the material inflation. Say if we want to look at from location Washington, D.C. to Berlin, or the labor inflation percentage or anything like that. I want to stick with the project cockpit just a little bit more, just to give you, a better understanding. Obviously, you can look at the general project information. We can take a look at the sales prices, obviously the return on sales for this project. We can take a look at some of the exchange rates that we've used in this project. Another key thing is the locations, and I'll be coming back to the location parameters a little bit later in the demonstration. However, if we switch to shift models as well as workers, we can take a look at that. Again, shift models. And then another cool thing is we're able to calculate investments and refunds as well. Obviously, you can see here, it goes year by year with the investments. And obviously, we can look at the investment period, the interest rate, the net present value date, and so on. That's just a couple features within FACTON. I'll jump back to the main page. So now, obviously, I'm just scratching the surface with some of the features that cost management has, but webinar time purposes, just want to move on to some more. Obviously, Jacques' next step to overcome main challenge in design costing, which was to collaborate and create reports based off all the information that you're seeing on the screen. And obviously, I'm very excited to show you this because FACTON is very known for aggregating all the data, creating reports for the managers, and so on. Now, the first internal report that I want to show you is something we like to call the CEA, or cost effective analysis. And I already have this pulled up for us. So if I jump into the CEA, or cost effective analysis, now the first thing, if I zoom in for you a little bit, first thing that you're going to see on this report, if I zoom in a little bit more, might be hard to read. Okay, first thing I want to show you on this report is how we're able to look at the start of production, end of production, which was 2023 to 2028. You may be wondering where all the years come from before that. We'll get to that in a second. But however, this gives you a very, very in-depth look at how your costs are developing over time for, say, material cost or manufacturing cost or the prime cost, revenue, and so on. And here's where the previous years come in handy. We're able to calculate your investments as well as your refunds. And then obviously we're able to use the cash flow for this in this report as well. And now the last portion of this report, if I scroll over, you can see is called KPIs. We're able to configure some KPIs that you would specifically like to see. Obviously, just for this project, we have the NPV rate, the discount rate, internal rate, and so on, as well as the break-even point. So again, very, very powerful report. Obviously, it's telling you how your cost is developing over time. And again, your finance people will love this report. So if I jump out of here, now the next internal report that I want to show you is something we like to call the ABC analysis. For this, there will be an availability to look at a chart as well as a table as well as a chart. So for this one, we'll be looking at the table first. So if I zoom in for you real quick. Now, this analysis is going to be enabling you to identify the cost drivers of the part selected in the project structure tree. So obviously you can see here, we have the A parts, the B parts, and the C parts. So you can see here the A parts are the parts and processes with direct costs with greater than 20% of the total manufacturing cost. The B parts will be parts and processes with direct cost of greater than 5%, however, less than 20% of the total manufacturing cost. And obviously the last would be the C parts, which are the parts and processes with direct costs less than 5% of the total manufacturing cost. So if you can look at here, you can see that we have a majority of the B parts. However, there are A parts and C parts as well. If I jump into the next report right here, which was the table or the chart, you can see here the certain parts that are located in the A part. Again, the total manufacturing or percentage of manufacturing cost for this project. Obviously, you can see here that we have the wiring spring steel. If I zoom in a little bit more for you, you can see the A parts, B parts, and C parts. Obviously, it gives you the parts and processes used in this process parts, and obviously it gives you the total cost for this and then in percentage as well. So that was just some of our internal reports. Obviously, if we look at this drop down, there are obviously many more reports that we can look at. Obviously, the business case, production costs, additional costs, target costs, the cost mode analysis, and so on. But another very, very cool feature that FACTON offers is the availability to look at the FACTON Power BI dashboard. So if I jump into here, this is our Power BI dashboard. Obviously, very, very, very powerful. It gives you, say, for example, if we want to look at the project servo motor North America, it's going to give you the details just for this. We can take a look at, say, the profit for this servo motor. We can obviously compare these projects. We can look at the revenue, the price, the NPV rate. If you want to look at profit by customer, you have the availability to look at that. Obviously, we're looking at the commodity. We can show our carbon emission CO2 equivalent rate as well if we want to take a look at that. Again, very, very powerful, and our customers love seeing this. Again, on the side here, you can see the projects. We can take a look at project comparison as well as version comparison within the Power BI report as well. So those were just some of the reports that I just wanted to show you just within FACTON, obviously internal reports, and then we have an external Power BI dashboard report as well. Now, as Jacques stated, the last step to overcome the main challenges in design costing was the ability to focus on design to sustainability. So as Jacques stated before, some of our customers we work with are focusing more and more on sustainability. With that, we have what we like to call the SPC function, otherwise known as sustainable product costing, that we call it here in FACTON. With this, I want to first start off by looking back into our data administration, again, where you're going to store all your relevant data that we'll use later in the project. So for this, I'm going to go to View, look at our data administration. Now, the first thing I want to show you is into our emission types. Now, with the help of emission types, the CO2 emission caused during consumption or generation is obviously taken into account in the calculation of site cost. So when you think of energy, footprint, gas, and water costs, and obviously as a result, you can find it in the calculation of our machine costs. So in this section here, you can administer CO2 data or emission factors for different calculation parameters. So for example, you see here that we have emission factors for the location, parameters for energy costs. We'll stick with that. When we look at the US country specific energy mix, you can see that the CO2 equivalent emission factors for the US is 490.8 grams per kilowatt hour. You might be wondering where we get all this information from. We do have a content provider that is updated quarterly when we work with them as well. So this is where all the information is coming from. We're not just making it up. Now, not only gives you location specific for emission types, it gives you we can look at gas costs as well. And obviously, if we want to look at more, you have the availability to look at that with the location parameter. Now, going more in depth a little bit into this, you can see that we have natural gas emissions as well as the gas costs for the location parameter. The natural gas emission would, of course, be direct emission or scope 1, and the energy would be indirect emission or scope 2. Now, I want to show you some more information on the back end of this again. So if I switch into origins and we take a look at some of our locations that we have for this project. So say, for example, again, I want to look back into Berlin, or actually we'll look into Washington, D.C., since you remember the 490.8 US was the country specific average for that. So obviously you can see here for this specific location, you see energy costs, gas costs, water costs, and footprint costs as well. You can see that there's a certain value attached to it, as well as our emission type, which again was the US country specific energy cost. And automatically the CO2 equivalent emission factor is attached to that, which was 490.8 grams per kilowatt hour. With this, a key factor that FACTON has is the availability to click on this initial value checkbox, so you will have this at all times. Below, not only can we calculate the energy cost, we can calculate gas costs. Now, one thing that is very, very key with this is, the gas cost will not change because obviously it's a direct emission and it does not depend on the location, or it doesn't matter where you burn the gas at all. From this, you can see the CO2 equivalent emission factor is 181.23 grams per kilowatt hour, the water cost and footprint cost as well. Now, one thing to mention is that we only calculate the product carbon footprint and no other environmental impacts, so land waste or land use, social impact, and waste as well. Again, this was just all in the back end. So if I jump out of the data administration, we can take a look at how you're able to calculate the emissions, say, for machine levels. Now with this, I'm going to open up one of our machines that we have, which was located in this routing. So we'll take a look at the fully automated assembly line machine. With this, I'm going to look into the properties. So if I switch to the calculation, immediately you can see the cost rates, or the right below the cost rates. Obviously, you can see the machine cost rate, the setup rate, the CO2 equivalent emission factors as well. Now you can also see the gram per hour in this specific machine, and this is due to the energy demand located obviously in the lower left. So say, for example, if I switch this from 20 to 30, immediately the CO2 equivalent emission factor will change as well. Now you have the availability to look at this all calculated. However, if you want to manually do this as well, you can. Not only can we do this for the emission factors or CO2 equivalent emission factors, we have the availability to look at manually for machine cost rate as well. Now, of course, you're going to have emission factors for other consumptions as well. And another great feature I want to show you is how we're able to look at, if I switch into special, we can take a look at the CO2 equivalent emission factors for, say, the energy demand per year, as well as gas demand per year, the total per year, and the emission per part. Now, if I jump out of this real quick, and one last thing I want to show you, I know we're running a little bit short on time, but is how we're able to look at this for parts as well. So you can see here we have a total CO2 equivalent emission factor for 135 grams per piece for the self-tapping screw. If I jump into here, I will show you what is meant by the 135. So obviously you can see here we're at the self-tapping screw back in the data administration. With this, it gives you the origin, which is Berlin. It gives you the CO2 equivalent emission factors at 45 grams per piece. So when we take a look at that, you might be wondering, how do I get 135 out of the 45? Obviously, you can see here that we have 3 pieces, 3 times 45, obviously 135. So that was just a little bit of our sustainable product costing. Obviously, we can go more in depth into this, but I see we only have 5 minutes left of the webinar, so I will wrap it up. Obviously, last thing I want to mention for sustainable product costing is that we have the availability to calculate CO2 emissions for cost centers as well. Not only parts, machines, but cost centers as well. Again, I'll just wrap it up real quick. There's so much more within FACTON. However, we have little time limit for this, so we have a little bit of time crunch. Obviously, our tool is very user friendly. Again, it's going to get everyone into a centralized system, aggregating all the data with many tools to help the engineers out for design costing, as well as reports and design sustainability. With that, sorry, Jacques, running a little bit late on time. I will hand it back over to you to finish it off.
All right, very good. Thank you, Michael. I hope you you were all now, been exposed to the theory, a little bit of the practice. Hopefully we've managed to impress upon you that standardizing and taking advantage of the data that's already existent in some of your systems to alleviate the effort required by your engineers and development team, so that the whole, or the company as a whole, can practice and deploy a design to cost and design to sustainability strategy. Just an anecdote as we finish here, and we can get to questions in a minute. Is something I came across recently in a publication, don't recall which one, but they were saying that basically the profession of the future is going to be that of sustainability accountant, which I thought was quite interesting, and of course quite relevant to our discussion, because estimating has now taken on a different dimension with the addition of sustainability elements, and is even more of a team effort than was ever required. So on that, I will turn it over to you, Gary, and
we actually
open it up for questions.
Yeah,
Jacques.
I have 2 questions for you.
Oh,
This is
sorry.
Jerry. One, and back to what I mentioned earlier, is FACTON basically has 2 product offerings, if I'm not correct, but you can expand on that if you like. One is for should costing, and one is for this cost management. Can you expand a little bit on that? I know we're really short on time, and then I've got one more follow-up question.
Yeah, so just generally speaking, and what I'll do is we have a follow-up seminar coming up in the coming weeks. And Michael, if you know the exact date of the webinar, it's early October, and I'm going to put the link to that webinar in the chat box in a second. But a good opportunity to see what we're doing from a CAD file import standpoint that's relevant to your question. Basically, with enterprise product costing, Jerry, of course, you're able to produce cost estimates for your manufactured components, but in a lot of cases, there's a combination of manufactured components as well as purchased components. And this is where the the variabilities start coming in with respect to what kind of collaboration are you getting from your suppliers. Of course, if they send you a CAD drawing, then happy day. Not all vendors are that forthcoming. If you don't, then of course the cost management tool allows you to perform some should costing, either using a top-down or applying a top-down technique or a bottom-up technique. And some even go so far as using the cost management tool to do tear downs to estimate purchase components. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yep, great.
Yeah.
The second question was on your versioning. Would a good application of your versioning be, say, to lock them in at different phases in the program or project, where I have, say, a budgeted model, a forecasted model, and then an actual model? So you could periodically throughout the process actually hone in on where your costs are creeping up or down.
Now, great question, and the answer to it is yes. As Michael illustrated, each version can be given a name and can represent whatever it is that you want it to represent, whether it's a design at the initial stage or a correction of the design 1 year or 2 years or 6 months down the road, and you can compare one with the other.
Yep, perfect.
So I'm hereby typing in the link.
Yeah, but thank you to everyone who has attended. Obviously, Jerry recorded the session, so we'll have that available to you as well. Again, if you want to have any questions for Jacques or I, obviously the emails or phone numbers are located on this screen. You can obviously type it down and let us know your questions or your comments that you have from this demonstration.
All right. Well, thank you. I think it's a professional courtesy to end on time without holding people over. So I'll just thank you very much, both of you, Michael and Jacques, for a wonderful presentation. I'll conclude by making a simple observation. In the world of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. In the world of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. What you demonstrated is you have fact-based information to see things. So thank you very much. Everybody else,
Thank you.
Have a good day, week, month. Okay, bye.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.